like the only guy I've ever seen. He really looks forward to it, and then he just goes in and absolutely obliterates them. Say a couple of words here.
Wow. Well, Mr. President, I appreciate you allowing me to join you on this incredible journey. I thank you for the trust that you placed in me. And I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America. And under President Trump's leadership, we're never going to stop fighting for you, for your dreams, for the future of your children. And after the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Thank you very much. He's turned out to be a good choice. I took a little heat at the beginning, but he was, I knew the brain was a good one, about as good as it gets. And we love the family, and we're gonna have a great 4 years, and we're gonna turn our country around, make it something very special. It lost that little thing called special. We have to make it so. We're going to make this so great. It's the greatest country and potentially the greatest country in the world by far. And right now, we're going to just work very hard to get all of that back. We're going to make it the best it's ever been. We can do that. If we had to wait longer, I don't know. It was going bad, and it was going bad fast. We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in legally. Let me also express my tremendous appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here. Come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden. Come here, Chris. Come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background. Come here, Susie.
This wasn't expected, but I just want to thank, obviously, President Trump for this journey. It was a great one, and he's a hell of a candidate, and he's going to be a hell of a great 47th president. And this team that we had, the best team, and, of course, even my boss, Susie Wiles, the best. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Susie. Look at her, she's shy. I've never seen her be shy before. Susie. They're great. Everybody up here is great. Everybody up here is very special. But the Trump, who did you say? Oh, let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. Now he is. Now he's an amazing guy. We were sitting together tonight. You know, he spent 2 weeks in Philadelphia and different parts of Pennsylvania, campaigning. You know, he sent the rocket up 2 weeks ago, and I saw that rocket, and I saw it coming down. I saw it. When it left, it was beautiful, shiny white. When it came down, it didn't look so pretty. It was going 10,000 miles an hour, and it was burning like hell. I said, what happened to your paint job? He said, we've never made a paint that could withstand that kind of heat. And but I saw it come down and turn around. And it was, you know, it's like 22 stories tall, by the way. It looks a little smaller than that, but it's big. And it came down, and you saw that fire burning. And I'm saying, only Elon can do this. It must be an Elon. And I tell the story. I told it last night. I had a man on the phone. I had the screen muted, no sound. I was talking to a very important man, happens to be here. And that very important guy, one of the most important people in I would say the country, actually. But, you know, I was president, and now it looks like I was going to be maybe president again, so I figured I could ask him to hold. So I asked him to hold. And especially because you're going to be president again, they hold. So I took the phone down, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm seeing this crazy thing that's going around and coming down. It looks like it's going to crash into the gantry. And I said, oh, no. And I said, do me a favor, do you mind holding for a couple of minutes? I want to see this. I thought it was a space-age movie or something. I put the phone down. Bad part, I didn't pick it up for 45 minutes, and he was holding. But this spaceship came down, and I saw those engines firing, and it looked like it was over. It was going to smash, and then I saw the fire pour out from the left side, and I put it straight, and it came down so gently, and then it wrapped those arms around it, and it held it, and just like you hold your baby at night, your little baby. And it was a beautiful thing to see, and I called Elon. I said, Elon, was that you? He said, yes, it was. I said, who else can do that? Can Russia do it? No. Can China do it? No. Can the United States do it other than you? No. Nobody can do that. I said, that's why I love you, Elon. That's great. And you know, when we had the tragic Hurricane Helene, and it hit North Carolina, they were really devastated. The water, this was a big water, as big as we've ever seen, water hurricane. It built lakes out of nothing. Fields became lakes, and the danger was unbelievable. And the people from North Carolina came to me and they said, would it be possible, at all possible, for you to speak to Elon Musk? We need Starlink. I said, what's Starlink? It's a form of communication. So I called Elon, and I'll tell you what, he had, and it was very dangerous. People would die. They had no communication. All the wires were down. I called Elon Musk. I said, Elon, you have something called Starlink. Is that right? Yes, I do. What the hell is it? He said, it's a communication system that's very good. I said, Elon, they need it really, really badly in North Carolina. Can you get it? He had that there so fast. It was incredible. So, and it was great. It saved a lot of lives. He saved a lot of lives. But he's a character. He's a special guy. He's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them. We have to protect our super geniuses. I want to thank some of the guys. You know, we have up here today the U.S. Open champion. He's a fantastic golfer. He's slightly longer than me. Hits the ball a little bit longer than me. Just a little bit. Bryson DeChambeau is up here someplace. What happened to Bryson? Where is he? Bryson. Oh, he was shot. He's hitting balls. Oh, he's on the way. He's hitting balls. Bryson. Oh, look at him. He's got a great career going. Great U.S. Open, Bryson. That's a fantastic job. And we also have a man, Dana White, who has done some job. He's a tough guy. So Dana started UFC and came to me, do you mind if I use your... Nobody wanted to give him Marines because they said it's a rough sport, a little rough. And I helped him out a little bit, and I went, and they said, this is the roughest sport I've ever seen, but I began to like it, and he loved it, and nobody's done a better job in sports. And you know, he's a very motivational kind of a guy, what he does. He gets these fighters, and they really go at it, and it's become one of the most successful sports enterprises anywhere at any time. It's doing so well. I'd like to ask Dana just to say a couple of words, because people love to hear from him. Dana, please.
Nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan. And thank you, America. Thank you. Have a good night.
That is a piece of work. No, he's really an amazing guy. But most of all, I want to thank the millions of hardworking Americans across the nation who have always been the heart and soul of this really great movement. We've been through so much together, and today you showed up in record numbers to deliver a victory like like no other. This was something special, and we're gonna pay you back. We're gonna do the best job. We're gonna turn it around. It's got to be turned around. It's got to be turned around fast, and we're gonna turn it around. We're gonna do it in every way, with so many ways, but we're gonna do it in every way. This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country. So I just want to say that on behalf of this great group of people, these are hard-working people. These are fantastic people, and we can add a few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again. And now he's a great guy, and he really means it. He wants to do some things, and we're going to let him go to it. I just said, but Bobby, leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby. We're going to be paying down debt. We're going to be reducing taxes. We can do things that nobody else can do. Nobody else is going to be able to do it. China doesn't have what we have. Nobody has what we have. But we have the greatest people also. Maybe that's the most important thing. This campaign has been so historic in so many ways. We've built the biggest, the broadest, the most unified coalition. They've never seen anything like it in all of American history. They've never seen it. Young and old, men and women, rural and urban. And we had them all helping us tonight. When you think, I mean, I was looking at it, I was watching it. They had some great analysis of the people that voted for us. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. They came from all corners, union, non-union, African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. We had everybody, and it was beautiful. It was a historic realignment, uniting citizens of all backgrounds around a common core of common sense. You know, we're the party of common sense. We want to have borders. We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. We want great education. We want a strong and powerful military, and ideally we don't have to use it. You know, we had no wars. 4 years we had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time, but we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny. We're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people. Yesterday, as I stood at my last stop on the campaign trail, I'll never be doing a rally again. Can you believe it? I think we've done 900 rallies approximately from them. Can you imagine? 901 something, a lot of rallies. And it was sad. Everybody was sad. Many people, I said, this is our last rally. But now we're going on to something that's far more important, because the rallies were used for us to be put in this position where we can really help our country. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make our country better than it ever has been. And I said that many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. The task before us will not be easy, but I will bring every ounce of energy, spirit, and fight that I have in my soul to the job that you've entrusted to me. This is a great job. There's no job like this. This is the most important job in the world. Just as I did in my first term, we had a great first term, a great, great first term. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try. We're going to try. We have to try. And it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that. I've seen that. I saw that in the first term. When we became more and more successful, people started coming together. Success is going to bring us together, and we are going to start by all putting America first. We have to put our country first for at least a period of time. We have to fix it. Because together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. So I want to just tell you what a great honor this is. I want to thank you. I will not let you down. America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, richer, safer, and stronger than it has ever been before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
if he has this mandate and acts on it, then in another couple of years, we'll be talking right here at this table about whether or not Americans approve of the job that's been done.
Keeping in mind that the policies he's put forward that he would do in his first day, in his first 100 days, for example, they are controversial and in some ways divisive policies. When you look at even that sort of core tenet of potentially mass deportations on day one, we saw in the exit pollings that actually more Americans would like to see a legal pathway for immigrants here, a legal pathway to citizenship than they would mass deportations. The other interesting point here is who he is going to be surrounding himself with, which we've touched on tonight. And it was interesting to watch that speech. He shouted out Elon Musk. You heard the Dana White, UFC head, shout out to Joe Rogan, the super popular podcaster. This is the coalition he has built around him. He's also talking about RFK Jr., of course, former third-party candidate, through his support behind Donald Trump, saying he has a lot of ideas. He wants to go do them. We're going to let him go do it.
Just go get him, Bobby.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Somebody who is sort of notable in the anti-vaccine community. So I think it's going to be obviously something to watch who he installs in some of these key roles here as he moves forward.
Well, you remember the inauguration speech at American Carnage? That really set the tone. That was
It did,
that
Lester.
and the crowd size.
Yeah,
issue with the
absolutely.
inauguration.
And I think that, look, he has always been defined by, I think, his approach to immigration, illegal immigration in this country. Obviously, during his first term, he was going to build the wall. Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Going to enact this mass deportation. So we will have to see what that looks like.
Okay, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I have to go to work tomorrow, but we'll just talk about this briefly before I go to bed. Why did the Democrats lose? It's a lot of reasons, but I've made some talking points that are pretty obvious. So day one of Biden's presidency, we have Biden closed the pipeline. We also have forced COVID vaccines and shutdowns that occurred from 2019 and forward all the way through approximately 2021, so like 3 years. And even today, I still go into restaurants and I still see people wearing COVID masks. It's the most ridiculous shit that you'll ever see. We have multiple taxpayer-funded wars that have started, which are Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia. We're basically funding multiple wars around the world, which is contributing to inflation. Inflation is causing everything to go up, from gas, groceries, rent, house prices. This is this is basically the huge issue right here. These taxpayer-funded wars, which have been causing inflation for the past 5 years. The next point we have is the democratic aggression. And what I mean by that is the mainstream media and particular politicians calling Republicans and anybody that is not with the narrative basically fascist, Hitler, or dictator. We have low military recruitment, which is mainly, I was in the Air Force active duty for 6 years, and the reason why I got out was because Obama budget cut the military, so my re-enlistment contract got denied because the military was going through a forced reduction and they needed to get rid of people, which was during a Democratic presidency. And a lot of people that were in during COVID that were in the military got forced out because they didn't want to get the vaccine. So this is further contributed to low military recruitment, and this is why they're having such a hard time recruiting people for, again, the last 5 years. The next talking point is the coup that basically happened on Biden. I know that Biden, he trips up on his words a lot and he gets his talking points confused and yeah, he stumbles around, but the Democratic Party basically threw him out and installed Kamala like the last 30 days before the election or so. You didn't give Kamala even a chance to even stay in the seat long enough to even have a chance to even win, hardly. There's been millions of illegal immigrants that have came into the border, which have resulted in an increase of crime and drugs. If you look at Kamala's party, she is mostly endorsed by celebrities, which the average American, especially me, we have nothing in common with any of them. The celebrities are all millionaires that live in mansions, and the average American has barely been living paycheck to paycheck. Again, for the last 5 years, I can keep saying that. So Kamala is endorsed by celebrities, while Trump is endorsed by actual politicians. So like RFK and Tulsi and Vivek. And I know that Elon Musk is in there too. And there's been another talking point about that. Trying to censor free speech platforms like Twitter, X, Elon Musk. If the Democrats would have won this election, they would absolutely be targeting Elon Musk. They would attempt to take down Twitter. They would further their agenda of weaponizing the mainstream media to silence opposing voices and get rid of anything, such as Twitter or Reddit. The Biden forced EV requirements. This goes back when he was trying to basically tax anybody who drove a gasoline vehicle, trying to force everybody to switch over to an electric vehicle when the power grid cannot sustain that type of infrastructure yet. I'm not saying that we don't need to switch over to EVs eventually to protect the environment. It ties into the whole Green New Deal with AOC and all that. But the grid is just not able to sustain that right now. It has to be built up to get to that point. And then the last talking point that I have is weaponization of the DOJ, the media, paid influencers, propaganda on YouTube. But the Democrats are not solely responsible for all the propaganda. Some of that is coming from election interference. from Britain and Russia and China. Obviously, foreign election interference, but it's both the Democrats and foreign election interference that's responsible for all that. And this is why Trump called it fake news a long time ago, back in 2016. That's basically what it is. So this is just a handful of reasons that I was able to come up with in like 10 minutes, and the list could get a whole lot longer. But it's already 2:15. I got to go to work in the morning. I'm not going to stay up too much longer.
I can tell you from talking to sources in the donor community and a lot of lawmakers who Ryan and I cover on Capitol Hill, particularly in the Senate, people starting to get a little bit sharp-elbowed about viewing what cabinet positions might be available to them, what opportunities might be available to serve in this second Trump administration. I think there was a thinking about Republican senators and whether or not they would potentially be asked to serve in a cabinet if the Senate was narrowly divided, depleting their own numbers on other things they have to do. But if we're looking at a significant margin in the Senate, all of a sudden, anybody from a state that's even remotely safe might find themselves considered for a cabinet position. And the cabinet's going to do a lot of work here, especially if the House ultimately ends up controlled by Democrats. Donald Trump made it clear in his first term he's not at all shy about using executive authority to its maximum level. He's been backstopped on that by the Supreme Court, backstopped again since he's been out of office with that ruling on immunity, essentially saying any official acts can't be criminally prosecuted. And the policies that he's laid out on the campaign trail, particularly his economic plan, the tariffs that he wants to put in place, are things that he can do unilaterally and may begin doing quite quickly, at least if he's going to keep all the promises that he's laid out for himself in the first early weeks of his campaign. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to you in the studio.
All right, Garrett, thanks very much. I've stepped over to the big board with Tom Yamas to drill down on where we are right now. NBC News has not called this race yet. They still got Donald Trump at 266. How does he? What's his path now to finish up this?
Yeah, and we just want to make sure, we're absolutely right about all this. At some point, we will call Alaska. That almost always goes red. That gets him to 269. You come over to Maine again. We haven't called the races in Maine yet. Maine, like Nebraska, gives out its electoral votes by popular vote. It'll probably go blue. And then by congressional districts. And congressional district 2CD2, it's usually a red district. And once we do that, you can see his number there, Lester. He gets to 270. It hasn't happened at this point yet. We expect that to happen at some point. We will project that once it happens, but we're just not there yet. We're not trying to keep anything away from former President Trump. We're just not there in the night yet.
Right. And so the headline of this night would be, because you went through state by state, and we kept seeing the same thing: underperform, underperform, underperform. Is that the story?
The story is he overperformed in the rural areas. She underperformed in the urban areas, in the big cities, and the counties. She needed to win. She was underperforming Biden pretty much in all the battleground states. And when we started the night, Lester, remember, we even did this last night on Nightly News, we showed you the easiest path for Trump. And it's not easy to become president, obviously, but the easiest path for him was to hold North Carolina. He did that, flip Georgia, and then win Pennsylvania. And he'd get to the White House. And tonight he's done that.
So you'd walked us through that. And so
we're still waiting on Wisconsin and Michigan, Nevada and Arizona.
So officially we're at 266 now, I think.
We're at 266. Right now we're at 266, right.
And
we're waiting on Alaska and then the congressional districts in Maine.
Was this something that could have been anticipated, given what the polls down the stretch, the tie?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We had a call with the Trump campaign a few days ago, and they were bullish on their sort of prospects. But again, on those calls, they're sometimes trying to spin you. And, sometimes you take this with a grain of salt. Are they right? It turns out on that call, they were right on a lot of what they were seeing in their own data about the early voting. Once early voting started coming back in some of these states and Republicans were matching Democrats, that was a big sign to Democrats like, listen, wait a minute, things may be changing here. It may not be as easy as we thought. And no one thought it was going to be easy. Everyone thought it was going to be a coin flip. It was going to be so tight. But now looking back, and we can look back a little bit and maybe Monday morning quarterback and say there were signs there for Democrats to be a little nervous.
And Hallie, obviously Democrats have a lot ahead of them now as they try to work through this and find the lessons.
Yeah.
But that takes time.
Yeah,
These
and
things don't get turned around even in 4 years.
And at this moment, I think there is, by all accounts and by the reporting that our teams are doing, a bit of a moment of shell shock here for Democrats, for folks who had worked to try to turn out the vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, who had hoped that tonight would be history-making in a very different kind of way, that instead of seeing, of course, Donald Trump elected, that the nation would see its first female president, its first president who was a woman of color. That is, by the math that you and Tom just laid out, looks to not be the case once Donald Trump does hit 270 electoral college votes. I'm struck by some reporting that members of our team put in from a Harris aide who talked about needing to find some love for the people, the other half of the country, not Democrats, right, not Harris backers, who chose to back former President Trump despite or perhaps because of his rhetoric here. And so I am curious to see as morning, I was going to say night turns into day, but as early morning turns into later morning, where Democrats are on this. I think you heard some of it at the table when we were with former Senator Claire McCaskill, former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, about maybe a moment of soul searching for Democrats, what the brand is, what the outreach is to Americans here, especially when our exit polling shows that fewer people identify as Democrats right now. We saw that surge in people who said that they really weren't down with either party, Lester. And so that is also a factor here, I think, as Democrats are looking at what this moment means for them and how they move forward. I do also think that control of the House, and whether that goes Democratic or not, is also going to be a factor in this as well.
Okay, Hallie, thanks very much. We're going to take a quick break right here, and then we'll pick it right up with our colleagues Kate Snow and Craig Melvin.
Top story live from Paris, live in Tel Aviv. We are here in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Every weeknight, it's your news playlist. Top Story with Tom Llamas, streaming weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
From NBC News, this is Decision 2024. Here are Craig Melvin and Kate Snow.
And welcome back. We continue our special coverage of election night here on NBC. Craig Melvin here alongside Kate Snow. Coming up on 3:20 here on the East Coast. Let us take a look at where we stand in that race to 270 with former President Trump on the cusp of making history once again with the return to the White House. Again, here's a look at where we stand at this hour. As you can see, the former president just 4 electoral votes shy of reaching that 270 threshold. It is widely expected he will do that here, perhaps in the next few hours. As you can see there, Vice President Kamala Harris stuck at 219 electoral votes. We had spent so much time talking about these battleground states over the past few weeks and months. So far, heretofore, the vice president hasn't picked up a single one.
Not a single one of the 7 that we've been following so closely. I want to note, he spoke a short time ago.
Yes.
He spoke at length. He invited a lot of people up on stage, talked about Elon Musk at length. There are parties going on around the country right now for President Donald Trump. There are people out there celebrating.
Yeah.
I think it's important to acknowledge that. Sure. This is a big night for half the country and a sort of dismal night for the other half.
We heard from Cedric Richmond, who is co-chair of the Harris for President campaign, acknowledging a few hours ago that we would not be hearing from the vice president tonight. She is expected to address her supporters, to address the country at some point tomorrow. But there had been, as you know, this huge party planned on the campus of Howard University. It was a party that never happened. But again, 4 electoral votes shy for the former president. Chuck Todd is here with us at the desk. So is Kelly O'Donnell. We've got Ryan Nobles as well, who covers Congress. So, Chuck, let's start with you. 4 electoral votes away. It's going to happen. The question at this point is how it's going to happen. Where does he get those 4?
Well, they could get it in Wisconsin. He still leads there. That you know, it's possible. It's hard to see a path for Harris to carry Wisconsin at this point. Alaska is one. Maine. So the numbers are there. I think now the question is, how much over 270 is he going to get?
To be clear for people maybe just joining at this hour, the numbers are not there for Harris.
They're just not there for Harris, and it doesn't look like. And what is in the blue wall, where she's coming up short, are in the cities. And what was interesting is during the early vote, you know, they were downplaying that, well, because the early vote showed rural voters came out big, suburban voters came out pretty big, but the urban numbers were down across the board, and they thought they were going to make it up on Election Day. They were look at how much time she spent in Philadelphia even just 24 hours ago. But Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit, it's a familiar. This is the same story from 2016.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Turnout numbers are down there. Turnout in the red counties, through the roof.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, it's interesting because North Carolina, not that much of a surprise, perhaps. But if you look at how much time, to your point, that she spent in Pennsylvania, 3 rallies just yesterday alone, the amount of money both campaigns spent in Pennsylvania, you know, obviously they'll, you know, for the next hours, days, weeks, they'll be looking at precisely what happened there. But based on some of the exit polling that we've seen so far, based on some of the conversations that I know you guys have had there with folks from Pennsylvania, what do we know about what happened there?
What's so stunning is that her events in those places drew big crowds. There was an awareness that they did not want to see a repeat of 2016. Strategically, they did some things differently. And yet a real frustration on the part of Democrats who, at a certain point tonight, began to go quiet. And that was a real early indicator that what they were seeing was not going to support her getting across the finish line. It may be a function of misjudging some of the electorate. It may be those who thought she was doing well, didn't engage. There'll be a lot to dissect.
Yeah, when you look at all the different demographic groups that Kamala Harris had to do well in, she underperformed.
Yeah.
When you look at all the different demographic groups that Donald Trump needed to do well in, he overperformed. I mean, we are going to be talking, and these are just early exit polls. They're going to be dissected, and we need to get all the data in.
Sure.
But the swing with Latino men in particular is something that no one saw
Double
coming.
digits.
People
There was an
write
expectation
about that for years.
Yeah, there was an expectation he was going to do better. The idea that it would be a swing, I think it was Joe Biden, a 23-point advantage before to a 13-point advantage for Donald Trump this time around, just that was something that wasn't on anybody's dance card leading into this race. And it's one of the indications that it seems pretty clear that he has built a working-class coalition that no president before him, at least not in this era, has.
And it's not just Latinos. It's, you look at first-time voters lean towards Trump. You look at voters of color leaning towards Trump. Younger voters, especially men, coming out, younger men coming out for him.
Look, the current administration, the president, our exit poll is measuring him at a 40% job rating. this is
when people
should,
assessed his
exactly.
term, his first term.
I'm talking about Joe Biden's
Oh, Joe
term.
Biden.
And I think let's not forget that is a huge organizing tool, if you will, for Donald Trump. This was considered a failed presidency. Our pollsters do their own election night survey, and he was sharing it's the #1 hesitation that they had, that they found among voters that they've talked to tonight about Harris was not enough distance from Biden. And you look at, and it was by far the biggest issue that voters had. And you cannot, I don't think we can sit here and sort of separate her from Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the driver of Donald Trump's comeback tonight. His unpopularity, whether, could more have been done, all sorts of things, but that is the driver of tonight.
And earlier tonight, some of the Harris aides that I was talking to said part of why they focused on turning the page was to not have her be attached as a direct incumbent. They wanted to try to have separation. Apparently too subtle a message for voters. And now Joe Biden, in the remaining weeks of his time in office, will have to contemplate how much of his legacy, legislation, and ideas that will be dismantled with Donald Trump.
You just said something interesting, too subtle. I think this is going to be a lesson that the Democrats take away from Donald Trump. Why does Donald Trump succeed? He's anything but subtle.
Right. Yeah.
On all of these issues.
He
says it very directly, at times making stuff up to make a larger point. And he'll say, yeah, that's not true, but I'm still trying to make a larger point about immigration, right? And that subtlety, I have a feeling Democrats are going to try to find their own version of unsubtle.
Hold that thought, Chuck Todd. We are actually going to take just a very, very quick break. But again, at this hour, it seems as if the 45th president of these United States will also be the 47th.
Closer to the Gaza border.
Welcome back to our Decision 2024 coverage. Almost 3:30 in the morning on the East Coast and 12:30 a.m. Pacific time. Kate Snow alongside Craig Melvin. You got a new cast of folks here at the desk as some of our colleagues go to get a little bit of sleep. But we are still talking, obviously, about former President Trump, likely to be the next president. We have not yet, for clarity, we have not yet called him or projected that he is the next president, but there really is no way, as Chuck Todd just laid out, for Harris to make up what she would need to become.
To be clear for folks who might just be joining us, what states have not been called so far?
So Wisconsin and Michigan have not been called. Arizona, Nevada, which we don't expect to. And I don't think we're calling Michigan tonight. Michigan's been very slow with their counting. So I don't think we'll have enough data there. Wisconsin, we're close.
Does Trump need one of those, or could he do it?
He actually doesn't need any of them.
With
he could just do it with Alaska and Maine.
Yeah.
And, and Alaska's not going to be a blowout for him. So you got to wait to see some numbers out of Alaska, which is also takes a while. The question is, does he win one of the two blue wall states that puts him over, at least as far as our count's concerned tonight?
And here's, again, for folks who might just be joining us, here is a look at the map where things stand right now. A number of surprises on that map for a lot of folks. I would assume, Chuck, there are a lot of folks, Kelly O, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Noble's there. Georgia, I think a lot of folks thought that Kamala Harris was going to be able to turn out enough folks in Atlanta and the suburbs.
I'll be honest, I was always a Georgia skeptic because there was a missing ingredient for Democrats this cycle. And the ingredient is Raphael Warnock. He was on the ballot in 20, and he was on the ballot in 22. And let's remember, on the ballot in 22, he needed a runoff to defeat Herschel Walker. Right. Okay, he did not get 50% the first time around. Yeah. So this was a tall order with Raphael Warnock. Yeah. Without him there, essentially as a running mate for the Democrats.
Yes.
Big loss.
And he repaired his relationship with the Republican governor, and that also helped.
For sure. All right. Again, just a very quick break here as we await what appears to be the inevitable, that 270 mark. Former President Trump declaring victory a short time ago. We'll have much more of our continuing coverage here on NBC right after this.
Still to come on the Channel 2 News. Well, the waters are certainly receding now. Still too close to call.
Lester Holt reporting from
Ground Zero, as it's being referred to.
It is, in fact, a taste of freedom. The Haitian people know a little something about resiliency. What's the biggest risk right now? Some of the troops who have been proud. I want to welcome you to the first presidential debate. In fact, we've been told we can't go any farther. You with some resilient folks. Let me get a hint.
It is 3:30 a.m. on the East Coast, 12:30 a.m. on the West Coast on an extraordinary election night as Donald Trump is poised for a historic return to the White House. The former president speaking just moments ago at his election headquarters at Mar-a-Lago, telling supporters that they made history tonight and vowing a new, quote, golden age in America. Take a look. Actually, we don't have the sound right now, but he did say a new golden age. He said we're going to help our country heal. He also said a couple of things that we have not verified. He said he won the popular vote. We're not sure if that's true. He said America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
Referred to it as the greatest political movement of all time.
The NBC Decision Desk has not yet called the presidency for Donald Trump. We should be clear on that, but it might be a matter of when at this point and not if. Let's take a look at where things stand in the battleground states. We'll start with Pennsylvania. We made this projection a short time ago. Was it an hour ago? Pennsylvania. NBC News Decision Desk projecting that Pennsylvania goes the way of Donald Trump, and that is essentially what pushed him over toward a victory. Again, we're not calling it just yet, but he is on the path to 270 because of Pennsylvania. In Georgia, Mr. Trump winning there as well. That's a state that Biden won in 2020. Now the projected winner, Donald Trump, with 50% of the vote. In North Carolina, Trump winning there as well. Another battleground state, 97% in, and you see the numbers. He wins with 51 to Kamala Harris's almost 50. In Michigan, we have not made a call here yet. It is too close to call. As of now, 81% of the vote in, waiting on some key counties there in Michigan. Wisconsin, the presidential two-way, too close to call, with Donald Trump up with 94% of the vote in, but not ready to project that just yet. In Nevada, we characterize it as well as too close to call, with 93% of the vote in Nevada. And in Arizona, we continue to say too early to call. We just don't have enough information yet to make a call in that race. Only 54% of the vote is in there. They had said that they might count for days. Let's take a look at the road to 270. You see the map there. A lot of red on that map, including Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And then let's take a look at Congress.
Let's take a look at the upper chamber here. This is where things stand. Republicans projected to take control of the Senate at this hour. Not much of a surprise there in the upper chamber. Lots of questions, of course, at this hour about what's going to happen in the House of Representatives. As you can see there, net gain so far for Republicans of 3, but there are still some 5-6 dozen uncalled races there in the House. Ryan Nobles, we spent some time talking about Hakeem Jeffries probably paying very close attention to our count there in the House. Hakeem Jeffries would become the first black Speaker of the House if Democrats are able to
And I really do have to caution our viewers that it could be days, maybe weeks before we know who wins the House of Representatives. For instance, just a few minutes ago, we called Michigan 7 for the Republican there. That's Alyssa Slotkin's old seat. She's currently running for Senate there, so that's not good news for Democrats. But yes, you're right. If Democrats are able to hold on to the House of Representatives, that would usher in a Speaker. Hakeem Jeffries would be the first African-American Speaker of the House.
On the other hand, if Republicans take control of the House, I know you've talked about a lot of the rural areas where there are some really competitive races, not necessarily in battleground states, but even in places like California, upstate New York. If we're seeing former President Trump perform the way we're seeing in exit polls with so much strength in rural areas, do you think we could see potentially some real pickups?
I would say right now, as it stands, there's just as much chance that Republicans win the House as there is that Democrats win the House. It's literally a 50-50 race right now. But to your point, Kate, New York's a good example. I think of the 5 battlegrounds that we're watching in New York, 3 right now are trending Democrat, but Republicans have held on to a couple seats that they thought they might not be able to hold on to. In California, the returns are still coming in. It's a mixed bag. Republicans picking up some seats that they thought that they could pick up, losing in other areas that they couldn't. But there's also battlegrounds in New Mexico, in Arizona, Washington State. So there's a lot that still needs to be resolved. And like I said, it could take some time.
And if it does take time, that also creates a void for Democrats who might get the House.
Who's going to be their leader?
Who's going to fill this space, especially as Donald Trump is leaning into being reelected?
All right, Kelly O, stand by. By the way, it's great having you here on nights like
Thank
this.
you.
Because
So
Kelly
great.
O'Donnell, you've been covering nights like this since 1996, if I'm not mistaken.
My first one.
Chuck Todd, not quite as long, but a long time as well.
I'm 2000, just for the record.
There we go.
Chuck, what are we looking at over here, bud?
Well, I'm just showing you, I was just following the House, and here's why we're not going to know the House. Basically, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Republican-held seats in California.
Yeah.
The Democrats, I mean, in theory, they could net their 4 that they needed just out of California. But look, Republicans picked up a couple seats in Pennsylvania that they didn't expect to pick up. Don Bacon is not done yet. In Nebraska, too. That's one that, frankly, Democrats had been counting on already. So I'm with Ryan. Look, no matter what, the House is going to be single digits for either the Republicans or the Democrats. But, you know, you'd probably slightly rather be the Republicans right now, just slightly, given that they added a couple of pads, if you will, in Pennsylvania that just made it that much harder. Put it this way, Democrats probably have to take every one of their targets in California, and I don't think they will. And that's going to be the challenge.
Can I ask you to pivot back to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
presidential race?
Let's do
Because
it.
it's been a while since we looked at the map and did the scenarios. Can you show us how former President Trump gets there?
Or it might be easier to show us how he can't get there.
Yeah. You said there's no way.
There really is. I mean, here, we can do it. I can show you. And here, I mean, at this point, if he just gets Alaska, which he's favored to do, he's just the 1 electoral vote short. And he is leading in the 2nd congressional district.
Maine is one of those states that doesn't do winner
just
take
like
all, that
Nebraska.
split things up.
Exactly. Maine, too, is the more rural of the 2 districts. He carried it both times. This would be the 3rd straight time he did it. We expect that. It's still a lot of votes still to count in Maine. But assuming that lead holds there, that gets him to 270. Without Wisconsin, without Michigan, without Nevada, without Arizona. And when you see the historic realignment that we're seeing tonight among Latino voters, it would be a stunner if somehow he didn't win Arizona when you look at the gains he made in New Mexico even and what they did in Texas. I mean, he increased his margin in Texas from what he did in 2020, increased his margin in Florida, decreased the Democratic margin in New Mexico. So it would be a shocker if somehow Arizona didn't continue to move in the same way.
I want to dig into that a little bit more, maybe perhaps next hour. But to Chuck's point here, I mean, the former president is poised to have, at the end of the night, perhaps later tomorrow, somewhere close to 300 electoral votes. I would assume that would be considered in most circles a mandate. If the former president has that kind of mandate, what does that mean legislatively?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One of them, for me, is what he didn't talk about tonight, and that is skepticism about the systems that produced this result. So does that put to bed his talking about elections can't be trusted? And that might be one important piece in sort of moving past that. On mandate, and I was struck by it when you used that word a moment ago, it does give him the political will to say, I talked about these number of things, both domestic and international, and I have the juice to get them done. And members of Congress would follow suit, I think.
Right, but the founding fathers did set up a system where he checks and balance, where he's got to get this through Congress, and Congress has set up its own rules where you're not just going to push anything through, particularly in the United States Senate, where even though they're poised to have big gains today, they could end up with 55, maybe even 56 seats. That's still 4 seats vote of what we call a supermajority. You can basically stop almost any piece of legislation if you don't have the full 60 votes. So that really takes off the table things like his mass deportation plan, things along those lines. But it's going to require Democrats to come to the table and try and find some areas where they can compromise with it.
I might argue Democrats may feel like they have to come to the table and work with, because, you know, one of the things we haven't talked about tonight is Donald Trump's improvement in blue states. I got to show you the state of Illinois. We're at 91% reporting. We know she's going to win it because we know how much. Look at this change, okay? Joe Biden won Illinois by nearly 18 points.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is going to win it probably by 5 once all is said and done. Okay, that's Illinois. Let me take you to a few other blue states here.
Virginia.
We've seen Virginia as another one where you saw where, again, and this has been, even in every blue county, she sort of underperformed. But Virginia, 10 points, it's going to be 5 points there. Let's see if it's a problem in every blue state. Look, here's Maryland.
Yeah.
He won it by 33 points. She's going to win it by 22 points. I mean, he picked up ground everywhere, and a lot of it has to do with this realignment of two major groups. One is obviously Latinos, and the second appears to be younger men.
Chuck, thank you. Let me go out to NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. He's standing by for us. He's at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Vaughn, I don't know if you could hear our conversation, but we're talking about the kind of mandate that President Trump may have and what his agenda might be. Can you help us with that?
Right. I think it's a good conversation around not only the realignment, but I think that this is, when we're talking about a mandate here, Donald Trump ran, especially here in these final months of the campaign, I mean, his most pure, unvarnished self. He told Americans exactly what he intends to do, from mass deportations to putting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of the U.S. health agencies that even dictate the vaccines that are on the market. He went as far as to say that he'll have Elon Musk go in and make the federal government more efficient by Elon Musk's own suggestion, echoed by Donald Trump, to cut the federal budget by 1/3, which, let's be very clear, that's staggering. That's $2 trillion, which U.S. discretionary annual budget is about $1.7 trillion. So you're talking about, where do you cut? Is that Social Security, Medicare, defense spending? There's a lot of serious questions about policy implications that are going to be had in these weeks and months ahead if, in fact, Donald Trump is to ascend and take the White House in 2025 here. And again, when we're talking about that mandate, American voters for the last 2 years have heard Donald Trump on the campaign trail, right, promise to go after his political enemies and use the Department of Justice as his own tool to go and investigate and bring charges against those who he has made the case unfairly targeted him. And Americans made a very explicit decision here today to the extent that they came and turned out. And I think that this is where, for those individuals that are close to Donald Trump, his allies, they have consistently said that Donald Trump is the one who is running the show of this campaign. There was no effort from any campaign managers to try to moderate him or get him to focus or stay on teleprompter. This was Donald Trump in his purest form. And now Donald Trump getting that mandate to go into the side of the White House and essentially act as the chief executive of the United States in the way that he has promised the last 2 years to do.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard for us. Vaughn, stand by for us if you can, please, sir, because we want to go to your counterpart there in Washington, D.C., NBC's Yamiche Alcindor. She's there at the Bureau. You have been following the Kamala Harris campaign since it launched. Any idea at this point, Yamiche, based on the conversations that you've been having with folks inside that campaign, when did it take a turn for the vice president? When did they know she was in trouble?
It's a key question, Craig. I was talking to Harris officials all night, and they really began the night very confident, feeling very joyful. I heard the idea that they were cautiously optimistic, and the vice president has been saying for the last 3 days that she felt like she had the momentum in this race and that she was going to win. That's what she was telling crowds. But around 10:30, when it started becoming very clear that former President Trump was making gains, and exit polls were showing that he was overperforming in key areas, including in North Carolina and Georgia, it became clear to the Harris campaign aides that I was talking to that she was in trouble. And I started hearing words like deflated. I started hearing words like it feels like a funeral here, especially at Howard University, which was her alma mater. There were hundreds, thousands of people gathered there. They started getting very quiet. They started being very sort of blank stares, started forming on people's faces. And then over the course of the last few hours, including just in the last hours as I've been texting people with former President Trump winning Pennsylvania, people are telling me now that they're pivoting toward looking at how to deal with Trump's policies and how to find love for people that they might disagree with. So definitely a change here.
All right. Yamiche Alcindor for us there in Washington. Yamiche, we'll check back in with you as well in just a bit.
Our special coverage of the 2024 election continues. Stay with us. We're going to take a look at our data wall and where the state of the race stands. We have so much to dig into about how this historic night unfolded, how this election unfolded. Stay with us.
Nice to have you along with us, whether you're at home or on our plaza. We're just glad you're with us this morning.
News lives in the now. Look at this. You can't even see anything anymore.
Let's break down what we know.
You gotta see this. News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
And welcome back. Our coverage of the 2024 election continues. If you are just joining us, former President Donald Trump in striking distance to become the next president of these United States. In fact, here's where the road to 270 stands at this hour, 3:45 roughly Eastern here. You can see the former president. He picked up Pennsylvania a short time ago. He flipped that key blue wall state, all but sealing Vice President Harris's fate. You can also see President Trump picking up North Carolina as well, which surprised a handful of folks maybe. But again, that blue wall, we're talking about Wisconsin, we're talking about Michigan, we're talking about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's gone. Michigan still outstanding. Wisconsin also still outstanding. And we don't expect to get anything from Nevada or Arizona for some time.
And while we have not made a projection of who is the next president of the United States, it's worth saying that on that map, there is really not a path at this point for Vice President Harris to come out on top. It really is Trump's. This election obviously dramatically changes things for both parties. And with that, we want to bring in some of our political insiders to talk about it. Sarah Fagan's a Republican strategist and former White House political director for President George W. Bush. Stephen Hayes is an NBC News political analyst and editor of The Dispatch. And we have Jay Johnson, former U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. Welcome to you all, and thanks for being with us. Sarah, I'll start with you as a Republican strategist. We've been chewing this over. We've been talking about what it was that President Trump did to get to where we are right now. There's been a lot of reporting that maybe he didn't always listen to his campaign chiefs, and he just sort of, you know, we saw him off the cuff, off teleprompter a lot over the last couple of weeks, especially. What do you think he did to get all those people to turn out?
Well, I think, you know, his off-the-cuff nature is what many of his supporters like about him. They find him authentic. They find him unscripted. They find that refreshing. But I don't think this was about what Donald Trump did. I think this is about what the Democrats did while in office over the last 4 years. You know, you look at inflation, which was so high during much of this administration, and many people are still feeling the pain of that as they dig out of credit card debt and high housing costs. So I think more than anything else, this is probably more a reflection of where the country has been the last few years. And it may not have mattered who the presidential nominee was because of the overarching economic factors, global factors facing the country.
The reality, though, is, Mr. Secretary, again, housing notwithstanding, a lot of the economic metrics, if you look at them objectively in this country, wages are up, unemployment down. Again, it doesn't seem to have translated for Democrats. But it seemed to me that Vice President Harris knew she was in trouble a few weeks ago when we heard former President Barack Obama explicitly almost pleading with black men specifically to get out and vote. And again, we're still pouring over some of the exit polling data. But it doesn't look like that happened. It doesn't look like men specifically turned out for the vice president. Why do you think her message didn't resonate as well with that particular group?
I actually think we have to reassess how we look at demographics in politics. For generations, the black vote was a block vote. The Democrat, every 4 years, would get 90% of the black vote.
Yeah.
And then we tended to look at other demographic groups in the same way, as if there's a so-called Latino vote. I don't believe there's a Latino vote. And it looks as though this election, Donald Trump will have received somewhere between 40, 45% of the Latino vote. I believe that as African Americans, as Latinos become further integrated into our society, they're also further integrated into everyday American thinking about the economy, about inflation, about schools, about any number of things, such that an unconventional candidate like Trump can come along and peel off certain types of voters that we would traditionally think belong to one party or another. And so I think we need to reassess entirely how we view various different voting blocks and talk to Latinos, talk to blacks, as if they're everyday Americans, as opposed to a group being concerned only about specific issues.
That's a great point.
Well, and Stephen, I see you nodding along a little bit. Do you think fundamentally what Mr. Trump was able to do was appeal to a wide swath of maybe slightly lower income or people who are struggling in this economy?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's true that there are many economic indicators that are pointed in the right direction, but it doesn't erase the fact that your ground beef is 30% more than it was at the beginning of the Biden administration. That matters for a lot of people, and it matters more for people at the lower end of the income scale than anything else. But there's one other point I think it's really important to make here. There was a 25-day period between June 27th, when Joe Biden had his disastrous debate performance, and July 25th or whatever it was that he dropped out, 21st when he dropped out. For 3 weeks plus, you had Kamala Harris and others at the top of the Democratic Party telling the country that what they had just seen in that debate performance, they hadn't just seen. There were 3 weeks when basically they were lying to the American public. I think the American public looked at this and said, if they're not being straight with us on this, what else aren't they telling us the truth about? And I think that did irreparable damage to her candidacy because she had been at his side for the entirety of the administration.
All right. Insiders, stand by. By stand by, I mean chug your coffee. We want to come back to you in just a moment. We're talking about some of the domestic implications here, but this is an election, of course, that is going to have global effects. as well. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now with some international reaction to this presidential election. Keir, with two major wars right now happening overseas, Ukraine, obviously Gaza as well, the eyes of the world on the outcome of tonight's election and what changes may come. What has been the reaction so far?
So, Craig, this is sending shockwaves around the world. Shockwaves, though, of enthusiasm and concern, depending on where you are. So, diplomats not authorized to speak on the record here in the Gulf region, using words like wow and stunning when they've spoken to us this morning. It's the middle of the day here now in the UAE, when they have spoken to us through the night as they watch the results. I just want to read you, Craig, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel's comments. Congratulations on history's greatest comeback, calling it a historic return, addressing his comments on X to Donald and Melania Trump. An Iranian spokesman saying U.S. elections do not concern us and will not affect Iran's livelihoods. So a very different perspective there from Iran, of course. And local television here reporting that Hamas is saying that the president, who we think will be the president, of course, Donald Trump, will now be tested. His pledge for peace in the region will be tested. And then let's just track over to Russia and Ukraine. President Zelensky of Ukraine saying congratulations, before crucially adding, I appreciate President Trump's commitment to the peace through strength. So trying already to advocate that Donald Trump will support Ukraine. Russia's foreign ministry spokesman, Craig, saying hallelujah. And we've been speaking to Russian officials, also not authorized to speak on the record. One telling us less predictability is incoming. Another saying there is a chance for a truce or at least some kind of change. Craig.
Our Chief International Correspondent, Keir Simmons, for us there with that international reaction. Keir, thank you.
Fascinating. It's already well into daytime over there, right, in many parts of the world. We have much more to get to. Early morning, our time here in the U.S., our special coverage of 2024 continues after this.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's
What's the
time for bed.
message that you're trying to get out to young people?
Know what is in the drug supply.
We've got important news.